50 Cent was blindsided when the police apprehended him, immediately suspecting Lil Meech of snitching on him and the Black Mafia Family, BMF. With tensions high and speculation running wild, Meech swore on everything he had that he didn't betray 50. As the rap world buzzed with theories, some pointing fingers at Rick Ross, others at Big Meech himself, the truth turned out to be even more shocking. The real snitch was none other than Big Meech's own nephew, a man who had already warned 50 that he would spill everything. And when the time came, he did exactly that, sending shockwaves through the hip-hop and street communities. 50 Cent, a man who has built his career on street smarts, resilience, and a relentless hustle, never thought he'd find himself in a situation like this. He's been in his fair share of beefs, dealt with enemies both in and outside the industry, and walked a fine line between legitimacy and controversy. But getting picked up by the police in connection to BMF was something he didn't see coming. The moment those cuffs went on, his mind went into overdrive. How did this happen? Who talked? Who had the nerve to bring heat down on him after everything he had done for the BMF brand? Lil Meech was the first name that popped into his head. It made sense. After all, Meech Jr. had already been in trouble with the feds before. His reckless behavior, flashy lifestyle, and growing ego had put a target on his back. Plus, 50 had warned him multiple times to keep his mouth shut and stay low. So when the cops came knocking, it was only natural that 50's mind went straight to him. Rumors had been swirling for months that Lil Meech had been talking too much, possibly slipping up and saying the wrong thing to the wrong people. When 50 finally got the chance to confront Lil Meech, it was intense. Sources say 50 was livid, staring Meech down with that cold, calculated look he's known for. "Tell me the truth," he reportedly said. "Did you do this? Did you bring this heat on me?" But Lil Meech didn't back down. He swore on everything he had, on his father, on his own career, that he had nothing to do with it. He was adamant that he would never betray BMF or 50. He knew that snitching wasn't just a career-ending move. It was a life-ending one. The streets don't forgive rats, and he wasn't about to be labeled one. Despite Meech's passionate denial, 50 still wasn't convinced. He knew the game too well. People swear on everything all the time, and yet they still fold when the pressure is on. So he started looking elsewhere. If it wasn't Lil Meech, then who? That's when other names started popping up. Rick Ross, for one. 50 and Ross have had bad blood for years. Their beef has been one of the longest running in hip-hop, filled with diss tracks, lawsuits, and personal attacks. So when 50 got locked up, some immediately speculated that Ross had something to do with it. Maybe he saw this as the perfect opportunity to get back at 50. Maybe he had ties with the right people in law enforcement and decided to pull some strings. But when 50 looked deeper, that theory didn't hold up. Ross had his own issues, his own scandals, and his own reputation to protect. Plus, snitching on someone like 50, that would be a suicide mission in the industry. Ross might be a lot of things, but he wasn't dumb enough to make that kind of move. Then came the next theory, Big Meech himself. This one was even wilder. Some believe that maybe Big Meech from behind bars had orchestrated something to shake things up. Maybe he was tired of how his legacy was being handled. Maybe he had his own reasons for wanting to bring 50 down. But that didn't make sense either. Big Meech had always been a stand-up guy. He built BMF on loyalty, on the idea that you never fold, no matter what. He wouldn't tarnish his own name like that. If he had a problem with 50, he would have handled it differently. That's when the real truth came out. The snitch wasn't Lil Meech, Rick Ross, or Big Meech. It was Big Meech's own nephew. And the craziest part? He had already warned 50 that he was going to snitch. People close to the situation say that Big Meech's nephew had been feeling some type of way for a while. He had been watching from the sidelines, growing increasingly frustrated with how things were playing out. Maybe he felt slighted, overlooked, or just plain bitter. Whatever the reason, he made it clear that he was going to talk. He had information, and he wasn't afraid to use it. But here's where things get even wilder. When he first told 50 that he was going to snitch, 50 didn't take him seriously. He brushed it off, thinking it was just empty talk. After all, plenty of people make threats in the heat of the moment, but never follow through. But this wasn't one of those times. The nephew knew things, real things. He had been around BMF long enough to have inside knowledge, details that law enforcement would pay big money for. And when the time came, he delivered. He spilled information that connected 50 to BMF in ways that made the authorities take action. 50 was furious. Not just because he got caught up in something he had nothing to do with, but because he had let his guard down. He had ignored a direct warning and paid the price for it. And now, the damage was done. The question now is, what happens next? For one, 50 isn't the type to let something like this slide. He's a strategic thinker, always playing a long game. He's already plotting his next move, figuring out how to clean up this mess and come out on top. Because if there's one thing 50 Cent knows how to do, it's turn a loss into a win. As for Lil Meech, this situation might actually work in his favor. It clears his name, proving that he wasn't the one who snitched. But it also serves as a wake-up call. He's been playing a dangerous game, and this whole ordeal might finally make him realize just how serious things are. And as for Big Meech's nephew, well, his fate is all but sealed. The streets don't forgive rats, and now that his betrayal has been